Hello and welcome to this episode of the Emma Kinsey Show. In this episode, I speak with Kerry, who I think has a really relatable story, and I think is going to connect with a lot of different people out there listening to this. Now, Kerry first started her sober curious journey by trying to moderate her drinking, and ultimately that led her to the decision of becoming alcohol free. I think that Kerry's story is so similar and relatable to so many people. She talks about how her drinking patterns changed during COVID, how her relationships with her husband changed, who continues to drink alcohol, how her friendships changed, and also how her relationships with her children have changed. Get a warm drink, sit back, and enjoy this conversation. Kerry, so tell me, what's your relationship with alcohol now?
So I actually like to refer to alcohol now as like a toxic ex-boyfriend who was super controlling, right? But somehow it's still within my circle because now when I see alcohol, I guess maybe I'm a little bit still kind of angry at it and angry at all the lies that it told me for so long and angry at how much it controlled my life. But I guess I'm not like holding on to any anger, but I just try to look at it like a toxic ex that is no longer serving me and I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, I love that answer. I've never heard that before. It's fascinating. So, what was your relationship before? Were you drinking very regularly, or it's more weekend drinking?
Towards the end of my drinking, it wasn't daily. It was definitely daily during that first year of COVID.
Mm.
But since then it was, I'd say, weekend drinking, but it was always on my mind, always trying to get to Friday to have a drink. And when I did drink, I was always drinking to get drunk. So that was how my relationship went, was I could not just have one drink. It
Yeah.
always had to be, once I had one, I just never really liked the feeling of coming down off a buzz, right? Like that first 20 minutes is amazing, but when that wears off, it's like I was always chasing that. So yeah, a big binge drinker, I guess, it was becoming more and more often that I was having those evenings and afternoons.
And I think that's so common, like the weekend drinkers, the binge drinking, not having just that one glass. Like so many people want to get to that one glass, but it's
Mhm.
just so difficult to leave it there.
Yeah, my husband, he had, I think, one drink yesterday with the Super Bowl, and it was his birthday. And I was like, who are you that can just sit here and just sip on one drink all night long? They're unicorns, I swear.
Yeah, exactly. They are unicorns. The people
Yeah.
who can leave half the bottle of wine in the fridge. No,
Yeah.
no, no. That was definitely not my story.
No, me too. Me too.
Okay. And so did you go down a route of moderation first? Like, did you try and moderate your drinking, or it was just as soon as you realized it was an issue for you, you went to zero alcohol?
No, I tried moderating, I'd say for a long time. I would call myself sober curious, probably for 2 years or so, leading up to going completely alcohol free. I joined an app called Reframe, and they have two tracks. You can be on a cutback track or an alcohol free track. And I tried the cutback track for a while because I could not picture my life without alcohol. How would I go to weddings? How would I relax? How would I celebrate? I just could never imagine a life without drinking. So I did try to moderate for probably a good 6 months.
Right.
And what I found, it was so much more work to try to
Right.
moderate rather than just making the decision to be completely alcohol free.
And what did that moderation kind of look like? You were kind of setting rules around your drinking, like no hard liquor or only one drink or only on certain days.
Yes. So my moderation schedule looked like I would only drink on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And I would set myself a weekly goal. I would try to, like, I was tracking towards the end of my heavy drinking, I was tracking how many drinks I would drink in a week. And it was a lot. I don't know if I should throw out the number because it's embarrassing, but that's what we do here, right? So
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
probably over 20 drinks a week. And I would say in my heaviest drinking days in like 2020, I was probably having upwards of 30 or 40 drinks a week. So I went into my moderation to try to cut back to like 15 drinks.
yeah.
And
Okay.
that still allowed me to have 5 on Friday, 5 on Saturday, and 5 on Sunday. And when I looked at that over the course of a month and I saw that that was still 60 drinks in a month, I was like, that's disgusting, right?
Yeah,
So
when you
then
add
I
it
tried,
up.
yeah. So then I would try to moderate and I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to try to be at 10 drinks a week. And what would happen is I would have an idea in my head. Okay, I'll have 4 on Friday night, 4 on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. But what I would find is I was always negotiating with myself.
Yeah.
And I would end up having 5 on Friday. And then I was like, well, now I have to remove one from somewhere else. And it wouldn't happen. And the other thing I did try to do when I really was trying to cut back about a year ago, I was doing really good not drinking during the week. Like I was never a week drinker until COVID. And then there was an excuse to drink during the week. And that
Mhm.
excuse went on for way too long. So when I finally started, at least at one point, to cut out the weekly drinking. So even in my early in my journey of trying to cut back, I would get to Friday and I would feel so great that I hadn't drank for 4 days straight. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to drink tonight. I don't think I'm going to drink on Friday. But you know what? 3 o'clock would come, which was when we would always have a drink before my kids got home. And I'm not putting any blame on my husband, but he'd crack open a drink at our normal happy hour time. And I'd be like, okay, fine, you know, but then I would spend the entire weekend trying to negotiate with myself and making sure that I left enough drinks for Sunday because 2 was never going to be enough for me on a
Yeah.
Sunday. So that's how it went.
I always call it like the alcohol gymnastics, right? Like you're
Yeah.
thinking it, figuring it out in your mind. Like I'll take 2 away from here. It was like a softer drink, so maybe I can get like an extra half in here, and it
I
takes
had,
so much
yeah,
capacity.
yes. And I had an experience that really sticks out to me. It was about a year ago when I was still on my cutback, and it was a Tuesday, and my coworker and I went out to lunch and we sat at the bar. And he was like, do you want to get a drink? And I was like, and in my head, I was like, but I never drink during the week. And if I have a drink now, I'm going to want to drink when I get home. And well, let me just see if I can do it. Let me see if I can just have the one drink at lunch. And I did. And I had one drink at lunch. But guess what happened? I thought about that one drink all day. I thought about the positive that, yes, I showed myself, I proved to myself that I was able to have the one drink. But that's all I thought about. That's all I thought about all day long was the fact that I did it. I only had one drink. And it's just, you realize that it's just wasting so much time, right? And so much energy.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So what happened? Like, how did your journey continue? You were on the moderation track,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you decided like enough is enough. I'm going to go alcohol free, or you went
Yeah.
back, or
Yeah. I was on the moderation track and not, I was going over my weekly limit every week.
right.
And the shame cycle that that created made me just speak so unkindly to myself.
Mm,
And I was really just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I had planned that I needed to take a 30-day break, right? But I needed to find the right time to do it. So it needed to be after St. Patrick's Day. It needed to be before the summer came. So I picked this weekend in April. I had a 10K on Sunday and I knew the race actually goes by my house. So we often have friends over that I run with, the moms, and the dads will hang out with the kids at the house. We'll always drink after this particular race. And so I knew that the following several weekends after that, I only had plans with like my in-laws, and I only had plans with my parents at Easter. And if I started on this day, April 3rd, I would be done with my 30 days before Mother's Day, right? So I could have mimosas on Mother's Day. So I strategically picked this date I worked several weeks towards, working myself up that this was going to be the day I was going to start my 30-day break. And what happened was Reframe has daily meetings every day. And they used to have a cutback meeting at 3 p.m. Eastern and then a alcohol-free meeting at 3:30. And I was always going to the cutback meeting. So then when I started on my 30 days, I started going to their alcohol-free meetings just to
right.
listen. And I just heard from these people, and it was like they were speaking directly to me, right? And they were so
Yeah.
inspiring. And a lot of them were still really early on in their journeys, but it just kind of felt like And I guess I should back up. When I said I was going to take this 30-day break, I think in the back of my mind, I was like, and if this is something that I do forever, like that is okay. Like I was at the point with my
Mm,
drinking where like, yes, I needed to take a 30-day break, but I also knew that this might be a decision that I have to stick with.
yeah.
And it turned out to be. So, anyways, I was on that 30-day break and I happened to actually go on as a guest on another podcast, just totally on a whim. He was just looking to speak to some women. And I went on and I was on there with two other women that I didn't know. And they were several months ahead of me on their alcohol-free journey. And it really just, I was already like, should I change to alcohol-free? Should I change to alcohol-free? And that after that experience with those women is when I decided that, yes, this is the course I want to try to take for myself.
And what was it about those women? They were talking about the benefits. Were there any specific benefits that resonated with you or?
I think just being in an environment where I was able to communicate how great I was feeling,
Mm,
right? And that I was with people that totally understood me.
yeah.
I just felt so much confidence that if we recover loudly, then we are going to remove that stigma, right? And I just felt like so confident in that meeting with them that like being alcohol free is just so much better.
Yeah.
Because they're all talking about all the wins that they've had. I mean, obviously it's not easy. I don't want anyone to listen to this and think that it's super easy, but when you start really focusing on benefits, and it made the decision to go completely alcohol free a lot better, a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, that day. So yeah, very, very grateful to those two ladies just for being in the room with
And
me,
for that chance, just like
Mhm.
that, like the small probability of being invited there and just
Yep,
changing
yep,
everything.
yep.
Nice. How was your husband's reaction to you becoming alcohol free? Because you said he was like also part of it, like opening happy hour at 3 p.m. or.
Yeah. It's been a struggle. I didn't really tell him at first. I just kind of stopped drinking but I didn't tell him at first. Um,
Mhm.
it probably was like 2 weeks went by and I finally said, I haven't drank in 2 weeks. And he was like, oh, and I don't know if he hadn't noticed alcohol isn't like an issue for him. So he probably just didn't really even notice it.
Right.
Um, but I didn't really go into why. So over the first few weeks and months, I would tell him I was going to these meetings. And I think he just thought it was something that I was doing to as a challenge. I never really communicated to him like the mental struggles I was having towards the end of my drinking. And I wouldn't call myself suicidal, but my anxiety was really debilitating, starting to become really debilitating. And it took me until probably a few months ago to really open up about it. So it felt like he was really unsupportive for a while because I'd say, I don't want these people to come over, or when these people come over, I need them to be gone by a certain time. And, I was really trying to set boundaries for myself or be like, I don't want to go to these certain places. And he didn't understand why, but I started to finally be vulnerable with him in a few months ago. And it's really helped our relationship. And it's really helped him understand, like, when I say I don't want to go to this brewery, it's because they had my favorite beer. And he's like, and it's, or if I don't want certain people to come over into my space, it's because it's not even that they're triggering, it's that they drink too much. And I just find it quite annoying now. And there's other things I'd rather be doing with my time than hanging out with people that are just centering their activities around drinking. So that's helped. And it took me about 8 or 9 months to get to the point of really opening up and being vulnerable and telling him about like what was going on in my mind mentally before I quit. Like he had no idea. He had no idea because actually, I guess I had done a better job. Like I wasn't like falling downstairs anymore and like spilling wine all over the house. So he had seen a change. I think my moderation had changed some things, but it wasn't enough for me to be happy with my behavior.
And so you said that like in the last few months of your drinking, your anxiety is really bad.
Mm.
did you realize that alcohol was causing, or not necessarily causing, but it was making your anxiety a lot worse? How do you
Um,
put that together? Because a lot of people
nope,
don't,
nope,
right?
no,
Like,
no.
we need to be taught this. Like,
I
that's
think you know what the other thing I have to give credit to that helped me move into a completely alcohol-free lifestyle is I read that book Quit Like a Woman first. That was the first
Mm,
book I read.
okay.
And when I realized like it just spelled everything out about the neuro, I mean, it helped with it's kind of like it takes some from this Naked Mind also and talks about the neuroscience. And once you start reading about all of that, you can't unknow it, right? Like even if I
Yeah.
wanted to have a drink, I just know how terrible it is for me now that I wouldn't do it. I had no idea. And I think it's like I thought it was like I knew it was causing me anxiety because I would wake up at 3 a.m. and not be able to get back to sleep and be in a shame cycle. But the
Yeah.
generalized anxiety I was feeling, or like for I had some instances that I thought I had like a brain tumor or something, and I went down a total anxiety spiral, and it was nothing, right? And if alcohol wasn't in my life, I don't think that I would have gone down those spirals. So I know it's crazy once you understand how it affects the brain chemicals and everything. It's just I know we need to be taught this, and I don't like to be preachy to people, but it's hard to like because a year ago I didn't know all of this stuff about alcohol and I was just going around in my life, and now when I see it, it's like I know it so much now, and it's hard for me to still realize that like my husband doesn't know all these things about
Can't
alcohol
stop
because
saying,
I know
right?
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I saw an Instagram post this morning that they had 39 ads for alcohol during the Super Bowl last night.
Um,
39.
and
One
for us,
for
that
Heineken
seems like a
Zero.
lot. Everyone else is completely normal. They wouldn't have even noticed.
I know. I
It's
know.
just the norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bizarre. Like
It
you
is.
can't not see it. You just see it through different eyes in the end.
Yes.
And
Yeah. So there was one commercial, and my son was like, because I've started talking to my kids about, I mean, he's 8, and I started to talk to him a little bit about it.
yeah.
And the one of the, I think it was like for Mick Ultra or something, and he was like, beer commercial. And I was like, this is what it's trying to sell us, Cam, that everything is better with this, and it's not at all. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Do you think, like, as you said, like you were walking around last year, you didn't have a clue about the science or any of the impacts. But if somebody had told you, like, all of the scientific points, do you think it would have changed your behavior?
I
I'm
don't know.
confident. Yeah.
I think I needed to be ready for it, and I had gotten to a point that I was fed up with how I was feeling all the time.
Mm,
And then I just immersed myself into Quit Lit and sobriety podcasts. And yeah, but no, I don't think I would have listened until I was ready to listen,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
So you mentioned during COVID, like the happy hour in your house kind of like came a little earlier than normal, right? And maybe drinking during the week.
Mhm.
What other impacts did you or have you noticed from COVID with drinking with yourself or other people?
Oh, that's a great question. Can you give me a second to think about it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
um, I think one thing I've noticed is, and this maybe is about COVID or not, but like we would go to our friend's house every single Saturday and drink and sit outside at their pool. And that's what we did all summer long. And through that, they became really good friends of ours, right? They continue to drink like that. And I don't. So we had those friends and we would hang out with them every single weekend. And we were like playing beer pong. Like it was gross. And we all have children. And it was such a bad example. And some of them still drink that way. And it makes me sad because it's causing a lot of chaos in their lives. Like I think we all like sat back because it was like no one was going anywhere, no one was doing anything, and it was perfectly fine. But that ended, and some people I think haven't been able to crawl out of those bad habits that they started. And it certainly changed my friendship circle. Like we used to with our mom group. We would get together and sit outside. We'd sit outside at the winery when it was open during COVID, and we'd sit and we'd have people over on a Friday night, and we would have mom's wine night. And it's funny because I think like I haven't really seen any of those people in a while. And then I was like, oh, because I was the instigator of all the get-togethers, right? I was the one that always wanted to be drinking. So my friendship circle certainly has changed through that experience. Because, yeah.
Do you feel any sadness to that about the friendship circle changing? Or was it kind of like the right time at the moment and it's just changed and developed as people do?
It's sad to me that there are people in my life that, and I hope they don't hear this, it's sad to me that there are people in my life who, COVID was like a really good excuse for people that really like to drink. Like it was a great excuse.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't crawl out of that, and if you're still trying to manage all your stress and anxiety through that, it does make me sad. Because alcohol really can ruin lives. I think most of the people that I've met through my journey, they'll all say the same thing, that like COVID was the last straw that really drove them into like, I don't know if they want to call themselves alcoholics or what. I don't use that term, but really pushed people, I think, that already had a undesirable relationship with alcohol even further. So
Yeah. Even happened with my partner. Like I'd say he has like a relatively healthy relationship with alcohol, but during COVID, there are definitely changes in his drinking patterns.
Yeah, it was like 5 o'clock, became 4 o'clock, became 3 o'clock. And for
Yeah.
a lot of people, it's still 3 o'clock.
And then
Sad.
we were in a different time zone to where we live now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then there was the kind of like that excuse as well, like it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And it didn't help that like all the social media memes and all of that, it was just like preying on us, right?
Completely.
And showing people pouring wine into their mugs going on their work Zooms. Like it's when you don't know how toxic that is, it gives you all the reassurance you need that it's something that's okay to do, right?
Yeah, completely.
So
So Carrie, you said like alcoholic isn't the label that you use. Like, how would you label yourself?
I call myself alcohol free. I do struggle a little bit with the term sober, and it's because I feel like if you tell someone you're sober, they just assume that you had a problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the definition of the word sober means I think if you actually look it up in the dictionary, I could be wrong. I think it actually means without alcohol, but I don't use those terms. And that's really just my issue with them and the way that they're portrayed. I think as we've grown up, the alcoholic was on the side of the street with a paper bag. And sure, there are people like that, but the alcohol use disorder is really a large, large spectrum. So I call myself alcohol free. I actually did a race in the fall, and it was with the Phoenix group, and they called themselves a sober active community. And it was my first time spending any time with those people. And a lot of them have been sober or alcohol free or whatever for years. And they're wearing their shirts sober right across the chest. And they wear them so proudly. And I was like, even though I was with them for this like 48-hour race, like I was still like so nervous about people seeing me in it and having to explain myself. I think I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with that term sober. But anyways, to answer your question, I call myself alcohol free. So
Perfect.
yeah.
And so earlier on, you said you couldn't imagine your life without alcohol because it took up so much of your time.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been filling your time
Oh my
since
gosh.
becoming like your race, like a 48-hour race? What the hell is that?
Yeah, it was a relay race. It's not like we ran for 48 hours. It was a relay race. I think the one thing is when you quit, or for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, it's like you think that you're quitting alcohol, but I had no idea that I was really embarking on a journey of so much self-growth. Like cutting out the alcohol is one thing, but to keep it out of my life was requiring a lot of reflection. So like I started filling my time with reading. Like I always thought I didn't have time to read, and that wasn't the case. I just was drinking, right? Or watching stupid TV that I'd have to rewatch because I wouldn't remember what I saw anyway. So I'm reading. I've always been into exercise, but I used to use it more of as an excuse to burn the calories from alcohol. And now I really enjoy it. So I try to get outside every single day. And we've been fortunate with a mild winter here in the Northeast. So we've been able to get outside a lot. And I've really found a lot of peace in just like being in my own space at home, and being with my kids. And they were, a big reason why I drank was I very much bought into the mommy wine culture of, it's a reward after a long day. It's like your kids are driving you crazy, so have a drink to relax. It's like, but I have found more joy in my children in the last few months than I knew was possible. And it makes me sad that I missed out on it for so many years, but I'm so fortunate that like I'm so present with them now. And like we play ping pong and we play Nintendo Switch, and my house is clean for the most part all the time. And I don't have piles of laundry piled up because I was too lazy to take care of them. So yeah, that's how I've really been filling my time. And I stopped cooking for a while because cooking was a trigger because I'd always drink when I cooked. But I've just started cooking again, like several nights a week. And that's been great because I didn't cook a lot at all in the beginning of my journey because I didn't want to be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've just filled your life with all of the beautiful things that you want to focus on.
Yeah. I mean, some people might think it's boring, but I'm finding a lot of peace in it right now in just like being with my family and being outdoors and just seeing where the day takes me and not letting, the drink I'm going to have at the end of the day be what I'm always working towards.
Yeah.
So.
I heard as soon as you take out that dopamine hit of the alcohol, you can actually start to find joy in the simple things.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Like being with your kids is just what makes your heart glow. And it is what it is. You don't need that extra stimulus.
Yeah. Yeah. Drinking is a big waste of time. So like with my husband, I'm like, if you're going to sit down and watch, like, I want to watch a movie on Friday night, but if you're just going to be sitting in the basement with a drink in your hand, and he has a pretty healthy relationship with alcohol, but I'm like, I don't want to be a part of it. I'd rather go read a book or jump on a meeting or listen to a podcast. I don't need to just sit while people drink. It just seems like such a big waste of time now. There's so many other things to do, so.
Nice. And what benefits did you find in your work? Like, so originally you were saying that you didn't really drink during the week, but it was a weekend drinker. But obviously, like the brain fog, that fuzziness, the lack of energy, the sleep deprivation would be hitting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah. I have a job that requires me to have a lot of attention to detail. And if I made a mistake, which I mean, it's not like I was making a lot of mistakes, but there are things that I work for an entrepreneur, so I manage a schedule, and like I put like a massage on the wrong day one time. Like I thought it was going to be on a Monday and it was a Friday, and I just screwed it up. And the amount of like anxiousness and anxiety that caused me, and like tears, it was like just awful. And so I'm definitely making less mistakes in my work. And when I do make a mistake, I can speak to myself a lot kinder about it. And I think that's one of the first things that I learned to do when I stopped drinking was just how to speak a lot more kindly to myself. So every mistake isn't the end of the world like it felt like before. And I would always have so much anxiety going into like on Sunday nights, right? Like the Sunday scaries or whatever, because of Monday coming and like, oh, what's waiting for me at work? And what did I forget to do last week that he's going to be asking me about? And now it's like, oh, okay, Monday's here. And the only thing I really get sad about on Sundays is that I've had such a great time on the weekend, because I'm really trying to fill the weekends with like a lot of just like joy and peace. And it's like, oh, well, now I just gotta like, my kids are going to go to school, and like, I love my children and I do need breaks from them, but like, I miss them now, it's weird. It's weird. So
that's going to make such a difference to them growing up, right? Like all of these like new memories, and like your son, like 8 years old, he's really going to remember this period of time.
Yes. Yes.
Like you've
I had
done
a
it
thought
in,
the other night. Yeah. I had a thought the other night. I was like, I hope when I look back on my life, like these are the best years of my life. And I hope when my kids look back, they'll have the same memory, you
yeah,
know. My
absolutely.
husband said, why don't you think it's just gonna get better? And I was like, you're right. It should just keep getting better, but they're not gonna need me for that much longer. So
They will. They will.
yeah, you're right. They will.
They need you more, just less physically, but like,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
right. You're right.
yeah, that's super beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. So if there's anyone listening to this and they're kind of like they're seeing the negative impacts alcohol's having in their life and they're just in that moment where they don't know what to do, what would you recommend them to do?
I would just recommend that like it doesn't need to be like this. I think that they say the opposite of addiction is community. So
Yeah.
I think if they're really struggling, trying to find a community of people who might also be readdressing their relationship with alcohol is a good place to start. I would recommend actually reading the neuroscience behind alcohol and what it's doing, because once you know, you can't unknow it, and just to not be afraid of asking for help. Like I haven't gone to an AA meeting and I'm nervous too, but that is, one way that they could potentially reach out for help too.
Did you ever listen to the podcast, The Huberman Lab?
Mhm. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yes.
After listening to that, there's like, I know so many people who listen to that and they're like, I didn't drink again. Like that
Yeah.
was the one podcast. Like I love that guy, like in all
Yes.
podcasts.
Yes.
So it's a punch.
Yes. I know. And I want to point people towards it. Like I want to point my husband towards it, but I don't want to be pushy on people. It's crazy that we have just gone along this long without knowing it. And I hope that we're on this. I hope we're at the beginning of a change towards alcohol in our society. And that's why I think things like this, like being on this podcast and like people like you that are trying to get messages out there is just so important. Because I mean, for me at least, like my life is so much better. It hasn't even been a whole year and it's just improved dramatically.
So one last question for you, Carrie. If you could go back and tell yourself something a year ago, to Carrie in 2022, just before you were about to like moderate, what would you have said to yourself?
That's a really good question. I would have told myself that I'm strong and I am worthy and I am deserve so much joy and so much happiness is what I would tell myself.
Amazing. Carrie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Emma.
Loved speaking to you.
Thank you. This has been
You're
great.
incredible. Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Carrie for being on the podcast today. I really, really enjoyed my conversation with her. She's such a beautiful, beautiful soul. If you like this episode, please leave us a comment below, and also subscribe to the channel and watch out for the next episode. Until then, ciao, ciao.